On the morning of June 10th, 1912, a neighbor noticed something strange at the white frame house on 508 East 2nd Street in Villisca, Iowa. It was a quiet Monday, the kind where life in a small town hums along predictably. But the Moore family wasn't stirring. The curtains were drawn. No one came to feed the chickens, and the house, it felt still. Too still. Mrs. Mary Peckham, the neighbor, hesitated before stepping onto the front porch. She knocked.
It's Mary.
No answer. She called out.
Open the door.
Nothing. Concerned, she reached for the door. Locked. That's when she fetched Joe Moore's brother and the town marshal. Within minutes, the sleepy town of Villisca would wake up to something it would never forget. Because inside that modest home, the Moore family, 2 adults and 4 children, were all dead, brutally murdered in their beds, bludgeoned beyond recognition with an axe. And they weren't alone. 2 young guests, friends of the Moore children, were also found slaughtered in the upstairs guest room. 8 lives taken. No mercy. No clear motive. No suspect ever charged. And over a century later, no answers. The Villisca Axe Murders, as they came to be known, remain one of the most horrifying and unsolved murders in American history. The details are grotesque, the setting is haunting, and the fact that no one was ever convicted adds to the enduring fear that whoever did it may have just disappeared into the cornfields, or worse, may have never left at all. What makes this case so chilling isn't just the brutality of the crime, it's the silence that followed. No witnesses, no screams heard, no dogs barking, no signs of forced entry. Just 8 bodies, a bloody axe, and a town frozen in fear. This story has since become legend, but behind the whispers of ghosts and haunted hallways is a real crime, a real house, and real people whose lives were ended in a way that still confounds historians, detectives, and paranormal investigators alike. So, who were the Moores? Joseph B. Moore was a well-known businessman in Villisca, running a successful farm equipment dealership. He was respected, devout, and active in the local Presbyterian church. His wife, Sarah, was similarly beloved, teaching Sunday school and raising their 4 children. Herman, 11 years of age, Catherine, 10, Boyd, 7, and Paul, 5 years old. On the evening of June 9th, 1912, the family had attended a church function, Children's Day, where their daughter Catherine performed. Joining them that night were 2 visiting friends, Lena, 12, and Ina Stillinger, 8, who had been invited to stay over after the festivities. They returned home around 9:30 p.m. By 7:30 the next morning, they were all dead. All of them had been killed while they slept. First Joe and Sarah in their bed, then the children, then the 2 girls in the guest room, all struck multiple times in the head with the blunt end of an axe. The murder weapon was left behind, Joe's own axe, found in the guest room. But it gets worse. The killer had covered all the mirrors in the house with cloth or clothing. He had placed a slab of bacon near the axe. He had covered the victims' faces. He stayed long enough to light a lamp and leave it dimmed under a chair. Some say he even made himself a meal in the kitchen. And then he vanished. As the bodies were discovered, the house quickly became chaos. Townsfolk stormed in and out, contaminating the crime scene before law enforcement could properly secure it. But even in that mess, certain strange details stood out. The killer had been deliberate, controlled, calm. He had stayed in the house for hours after the murders. The curtains were closed, but there were no signs of forced entry. The children were brutally struck multiple times. far more than necessary. The intensity of the blows suggests rage, or at least some form of deep emotional disturbance. But if it was personal, why kill the Stillinger girls? And if it was random, how did the killer move so silently through a house full of people? These questions haunted Villisca, still do. And when rumors began to spread of a traveling minister, of ritual killings, of ghosts in the attic, the story began to change. What started as a horrific true crime would slowly begin to drift into legend. And the house at 508 East 2nd Street? It became the center of something much bigger than murder. It became the Axe House of horrors. Disturbed horror. In the days following the murders, the town of Villisca was on edge. Grief turned into suspicion. Someone had done this, and that someone might still be out there. The sheriff launched an investigation immediately, but time wasn't on his side. More than 100 townspeople had wandered through the house before the scene was ever secured. Evidence was touched, moved. Some even took souvenirs. The murders were horrific, but methodical. Whoever had done this had taken their time. And that led some to believe the killings were premeditated, deliberate, maybe even ritualistic. There were several suspects, and each one only made the story more disturbing. The first was Reverend George Kelly. He was a traveling preacher, small, twitchy, and known for his bizarre behavior. Kelly had been present at the Children's Day event the Moore family attended the night before their deaths. He left town just hours after the murders. 2 weeks later, Kelly wrote a letter to authorities that described the crime in alarming detail. Details that hadn't been released to the public. When confronted, he claimed God had revealed it to him. Eventually, he confessed to the murders. But then, he took it back. Some believed he was mentally unstable and easily manipulated. He was tried twice. The first jury was hung. The second acquitted him. No conviction, no closure. Then came Frank F. Jones, a prominent Villisca businessman and state senator. He had once employed Joe Moore, but after a falling out, Moore started his own successful business and reportedly took several key clients with him. Local gossip claimed Jones was enraged, that he hired someone to do the job for him, that someone was William Blackie Mansfield, a known criminal who had murdered his own wife and child with an axe. Some investigators believe Mansfield was a serial killer, moving from town to town by train. But Mansfield had an airtight alibi. He was in Illinois when the Villisca murders happened. Once again, the trail went cold. By the end of June 1912, the Villisca Axe Murders had become a national obsession. The story spread like wildfire. Newspapers from coast to coast printed gruesome headlines. Some included graphic sketches of the murder scene. Others ran sensational theories, implicating secret cults, drifters, or even entire traveling gangs. Reporters descended on Villisca, turning the town into a media circus. Locals who had never spoken to a journalist suddenly found themselves quoted in Chicago and New York papers. But with the exposure came distortion. Facts blurred, quotes twisted, fear amplified. And with every reprint, the truth became harder to separate from the noise. The Stillinger family, whose 2 daughters had been sleeping over that night, were devastated. Their grief was compounded by the public scrutiny. Strangers speculated about their morals, their decisions, even their parenting. Some asked why Lena and Ina had been allowed to stay over in the first place, as if that somehow explained what happened. Meanwhile, the Moors were buried together in a single row at the Villisca Cemetery. Hundreds attended the funeral. The town closed its shops. The church bells rang, but the horror didn't fade with the procession. If anything, it grew. People locked their doors for the first time in living memory. Farmers slept with shotguns. Families moved away. And beneath the surface, everyone asked the same question. What kind of person could do this and disappear? One theory gained traction, that the killer was a serial drifter, riding trains from town to town, murdering families in their sleep. The idea wasn't as far-fetched as it seemed. Other axe murders had occurred across the Midwest around the same time, in Kansas, Illinois, and Colorado. Similar methods, same signature, entire families killed with the blunt side of an axe. No robbery, no witnesses. Some investigators believed they were all connected, part of a horrifying pattern, a phantom killer slipping between the cracks of America's rail lines, always one step ahead of the law. That theory led back to William "Blackie" Mansfield, the man suspected of killing his own family. But despite being arrested, Mansfield's alibi stood firm. He was released. The theory lost steam. Still, the similarities between the crimes remained unsettling. Over the years, the media kept coming back to Villisca. In the 1950s, true crime magazines revisited the case. In the 1970s, local historians published books trying to piece together the evidence. In 1994, a made-for-TV movie dramatized the murders, sparking a new generation's interest. Then came the ghost shows. Starting in the early 2000s, shows like Ghost Adventures and Most Terrifying Places in America featured the Villisca Axe Murder House as a haunted hotspot. They brought thermal cameras, spirit boxes, EVP recorders, Ouija boards. They brought ratings too. Each episode added a new layer of myth to the house, a new story, a new voice captured on tape. Some visitors claimed to feel overcome by sadness the moment they stepped inside. Others reported nausea, panic attacks, even fainting spells. One paranormal team swore they saw an axe levitating in the children's room, though no footage ever surfaced. Skeptics remained unconvinced. They argued that the power of suggestion, combined with the house's grim history, was enough to make anyone uneasy. Still, others insisted they'd seen too much, felt too much. They believed. Despite decades of theories, suspects, and speculation, the Villisca Axe murders remain one of America's most infamous unsolved murder cases. No arrests, no convictions, just shadows. And that's what makes the story so enduring. In the absence of answers, people create their own. Was it a jealous rival? A deranged preacher? A random drifter? Or something darker? And if it was something darker, something that didn't leave fingerprints or tracks, what exactly are we dealing with? Local folklore began to merge with history. People started referring to the house not just as a crime scene, but as a thin place, a location where the veil between the living and the dead wears thin. Some locals won't go near it. Others pass by it slowly, staring through its dusty windows. Tourists take photos. Investigators bring equipment. And all of them, in some way, are trying to understand what happened inside those walls on June 9th, 1912. Not just who did it, but how could it happen? And why 8 people had to die so violently, so silently, only for the world never to get an answer. More than a century has passed since the night the Moore family and the Stillinger girls were murdered in Villisca, Iowa, and yet the house still stands, unchanged, frozen in time. You can visit it. You can walk through the same narrow hallways, stand in the room where the children slept, and climb the attic stairs where the killer may have hidden, waiting for the town to go quiet. Many have tried. Few leave the same. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House has become a symbol, not just of horror, but of unresolved fear. It sits as a shrine to one of the darkest chapters in small-town America. People from all over the world come to see it, not just true crime fans, but paranormal seekers, ghost hunters, skeptics, believers, documentary crews, YouTubers, TikTokers, and even historians. The draw isn't just the crime, it's the energy, the unease, the sense that something inside that house refuses to settle, and that maybe it never will. Some of the house's visitors report immediate physical reactions, shortness of breath as they walk through the living room, sudden migraines in the children's bedroom, extreme nausea on the staircase, or the unmistakable feeling of being watched, even when standing completely alone. It's not just stories passed down in hushed tones. There are videos, audio recordings, journal entries. Online forums are filled with first-hand experiences. People describe the same eerie sensations, even when visiting years apart. They all use the same word, wrong. Something about the house feels wrong. In 2014, a paranormal investigator spent the night in the house. Around 12:45 a.m., he was found alone, bleeding from a self-inflicted chest wound. He survived, but claimed later he didn't remember harming himself. He only remembered feeling overwhelmed, as if something had taken over. Police ruled out foul play, but the incident shook the paranormal community. Even those who mocked the idea of ghosts started to wonder if something was happening in that house. If not supernatural, then at least psychological. A kind of darkness embedded in the space itself. A stain that couldn't be scrubbed away. Over time, the Villisca murders have crept into pop culture in subtle, eerie ways. They've inspired novels, stage plays, and low-budget horror films. They've been featured on podcasts, in art exhibits, and even in school curricula. But the most chilling part of the Villisca story isn't what's been added. It's what's never been answered. We still don't know who did it, despite over a century of rumors, arrests, trials, and investigations. The case remains open. Theories abound, but evidence is lost. Witnesses are long gone. The killer, if still alive, would be well over 130 years old. Which means one thing: whoever did it got away with it. And that may be the most haunting detail of all. So why does this story still haunt people? Why can't we let it go? Because it taps into something primal. The idea that you can be safe in your home, and then suddenly, you're not. That horror doesn't come with a warning that it can be silent, patient, intimate. 8 people asleep in their beds. No screams, no struggle, just the sound of an axe in the dark, and then stillness. And maybe that's why so many believe the house is haunted, because some stories are too heavy to die. The Villisca Axe Murder House still hosts overnight stays. It's not just a tourist attraction. It's a ritual now. Some sleep with cameras running all night. Others leave candles, drawings, or letters by the beds. A few try to speak directly to the spirits they believe remain. And some don't make it through the night at all. They leave, pale-faced and shaking, long before dawn. Whatever you believe, whether the house is haunted by ghosts, trauma, or imagination, one thing is certain: the story of Villisca won't go away. Because some houses don't forget, and some crimes never stop echoing. Not through screams, but through silence. The Villisca Axe Murder House has become more than a crime scene. It is a wound in time, something that refuses to heal, refuses to be forgotten. And if you ever find yourself passing through Iowa, don't go in alone. Some doors were never meant to open again. If this story disturbed you, and you want more true horror based on real events, make sure to subscribe. Hit the bell so you don't miss what's hiding in the next shadows.